my YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is in upstate New York, and today I have a few things that I'd like to go over regarding the week's news. I was in a McDonald's today with my daughter, and I had a chance to pull out a 2-day-old New York Times that I'd been reading through and found several more very interesting articles in that paper as I had the leisure to kind of comb through them. Several of them were on the business pages, and I'd like to go over a few of them. This is from Tuesday, December 17th, 2024, and today is Thursday, December 19th, just to give you a little perspective. Here's one article that I liked very much. It says, U.S. casts eye on limiting legacy chips from China. Now, what are legacy chips? Legacy chips are kind of a standard old-fashioned computer chip that is used to kind of run common machinery and all sorts of stuff. Nothing terribly high-tech compared to other stuff that is out there. But basically, well, let me just say, basically standard stuff, standard old-fashioned chips used for a lot of different purposes. And apparently the U.S. doesn't like the fact that China makes so many of these and actually is able to sell them at a very low price, and so it is looking for the idea of somehow blocking them from the American market or putting some kind of tariff on it, but it really doesn't know what to do because tariffs are usually placed on finished goods, whereas this is apparently not a finished good. So, excuse me just one second. So, at any rate, they don't like the idea that China is not only good at lots of other stuff like batteries and electric cars, but it's making too many of these really important standard chips. So it wants to kind of stop that from coming into the United States so that the United States can become more competitive and have a protected market for selling these chips from factories in the United States, apparently, although I don't know how many factories do actually produce chips. I know in my own neighborhood, meaning within a 100-mile radius, there is a major chip producer outside of Albany, New York, but I don't know really that much about the market for chips. So there are high-tech chips, of course, which, according to news sources, China is always trying to import new, and the United States is always trying to block China from importing on the basis of national security concerns. But I think that the United States is having trouble controlling all these markets, and certainly is having trouble competing. And apparently China has run circles around the United States. So now we have this article, as I said a couple of days ago, U.S. casts eye on limiting legacy chips from China. I'm not really going to quote too much from the article because I really didn't do a lot of underlining on it. It says here, quote, China is subsidizing those chips in these new fabs, dumping them into the global market and hiking the price. Gina Raimondo, the Commerce Secretary, said at the Reagan National Defense Forum in Simi Valley, California on December 7th. That isn't fair, and there may be a case for tariffs on that, unquote. So, you know, that's one of the problems we have. Uh, United States always crying tears over the fact that it just can't be part of the international market and play on a level playing field. So it kind of throws stones at its competitors and tries to stop them by any means necessary. Well, do you think that the best way to look at this is as a drowning, flailing person trying to keep his head above water, and grabbing a hold of anything it can? Uh, there's not too much to be said for the survival of such a person in that type of predicament. So we can imagine that the U.S. is kind of flailing individual drowning in a sea of progress around the world. So let's end that story about the legacy chips and go on to something else. Here we have a story about a corporate head of a very large Indian concern that apparently is running into legal trouble, or the U.S. is trying to accuse this company or maybe the individual of some crime. It says here New Delhi. And by the way, I just want to mention that this is part of the anti-Indian foreign policy of the U.S. ever since India did not climb aboard the pro-Ukraine train and support Russia and support the Ukraine with weapons and everything like that in the West's aggressive posture against Russia using Ukraine as a foil. India did not want a part of that. And so that puts India on the outs with the West. So therefore, the New York Times has turned into has sort of raised the banner of an anti-India crusade because of that. The U.S., the New York Times is kind of like a spokesplace or a spokesvessel for the foreign policy establishment of the U.S. and is used as a kind of foil, a media foil. So let's just look at this article quickly. It says, an icon of corporate India stumbles. And here it says that Gautam Adani, one of India's most successful businessmen, it says, hours after the U.S., this is a lead out of New Delhi, hours after, and let me mention the authors, it's by Alex Travelli and Abdi Latif Tahir. Sounds like an Indian name. New Delhi. Hours after U.S. officials indicted Gautam Adani, one of India's most successful businessmen, on fraud and conspiracy charges, Kenya's president publicly backed away from lucrative infrastructure deals with Mr. Adani's companies to overhaul Nairobi's international airport and the country's electricity grid. In other words, the idea is that this Indian guy or this Indian company, let's make sure which it is. No, apparently it's the individual who is indicted. Now this big Indian concern, which is very close to the Modi administration of India, India's top leader, is going to run into marketing problems because its chief has been indicted for corruption. Well, you can indict anyone for corruption. And the beautiful thing about this is that this article actually addresses the point. Let me see if I can find this. It says here, Mr. Modi, meaning the president of India, has kept quiet about Mr. Adami's ordeals, But early this month, spokesman for India's ruling party, the Bharatiya Janata Party, lashed out, making it clear they regarded the U.S. action against Mr. Adani as an attack on India itself. The U.S. State Department and the American, quote, deep state, unquote, they said, were conspiring with their political opponents in, quote, an attempt to destabilize India, unquote. And I believe that hits the nail right on the head. That's exactly what is happening here. The U.S. is using this attack on the head of a very important conglomerate in India to try and damage India. The U.S. is on a campaign to discipline India for it not going along with the Ukraine project. That is the aggressive project of the United States, NATO, and Western Europe to bash Russia, try to damage, slow Russia, debilitate Russia, break Russia apart, and destroy it, simply as a looting expedition for no justifiable reason other than some kind of out-of-hand greed that the leaders of the United States and Western Europe suffer from. Hard to get a hold on their nuttiness, really. At any rate, here the leading party there in India basically spelled it all out. Let me make sure. It said the U.S. State Department and the American deep state, they said, were conspiring with their political opponents in, quote, an attempt to destabilize India, unquote. It goes on and says, I'm quoting from the Times, the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi called the accusation, quote, disappointing, unquote. Disappointing that these folks actually get what's happening. However, I don't think India is about to roll over and play dead. By the way, there's a whole other issue regarding India and Canada, something going on that India, allegedly assassinated some Canadian citizen, and there's some talks with the United States about it too. And, in other words, India is going to be the bad guy on the block, or U.S. foreign policy is trying to paint India as the bad guy on the block because it just won't go along with U.S. foreign policy objectives regarding Ukraine. So we can see all this as sort of good news in a way. Sooner or later, these people are going to out themselves, and we're going to see, the true face of U.S. foreign policy exposed. Let me just go over a few other articles if I can find them. One of them I rather enjoyed reading was about Donald Trump, who is holding forth on vaccines, the media, and drones. Okay, this is the title. Trump holds forth on vaccines, the media, and drones. Well, he talks about all this stuff. One thing I liked about it here is regarding the vaccines. He says what? Oh, yes, here. There are mandates saying that public schools, kids that go to public schools have to be vaccinated. And this is the quote from the Times. Quote, I don't like, quote, by the way, of they're quoting Trump. Quote, I don't like mandates, unquote, Mr. Trump said. Quote, I'm not a big mandate person, unquote. And this he is apparently referring to the mandates on vaccines for school kids. A paragraph before that, he says, quote, something's wrong and we're going to find out, unquote, Mr. Trump said. He He also criticized vaccine mandates for schools, long considered the foundation of the nation's defense against infectious diseases. Well, that's when he says, I don't like mandates. I'm not a big mandate person. And that's good because I think these mandates are pushing away a lot of taxpayers from sending their kids to public schools, and those parents really miss out on, on a public education because they don't want their child to be subject to these vaccinations. So I think Trump is just saying this shouldn't be forced on people. Looking around, I'm going to go that by the way, was an article by Zolan Kano-Youngs. Now we're looking around a little bit here and seeing what else is here, because I did see an interesting article on the mayor of New York. He's running again for mayor, and apparently Trump likes him, which I think is a good thing. And of course, they seem to be after this guy. They denied him some kind of matching funds program. Either it was the city or the state. I'm not sure which. Let me see if I can find it here. There were so many good articles in this particular issue of the New York Times. Okay, here it is. Here's one article. Board denies Adams public matching funds for a re-election bid, by Emma G. Fitzsimmons and Bianca Palaro. New York Times, Tuesday, December 17, 2024. Mayor Eric Adams was denied public matching funds for his re-election campaign on Monday as he faces federal corruption charges focused on his fundraising practices, dealing a major setback to his bid for a second term. Well, here we go again. In other words, corruption. Throw a charge at someone, throw a monkey wrench in the works. So it's just going to slow him down. It doesn't matter whether he was guilty or not. This is one way to try and derail a mayoral candidate. So he's not going to get his matching funds. And this guy says it's not going to stop him. He's going to go on. He's going to do fine. He's going to work twice as hard or 3 times as hard. I can tell you it's pretty exciting to see these guys stand up in the face of all the stuff that's thrown at them. Now here's another article about that in the same paper, or same page actually, by Emma G. Fitzsimmons as well. And this is headlined, "For Mayor of New York, Empathy from Trump." And basically, apparently, Trump is willing to offer, or would consider offering this guy a pardon if he had been, I guess, convicted on these alleged corruption charges. And why? Because apparently Trump knows that there's something called a witch hunt. Trump recognizes that he has been treated unfairly, and so he sees the same thing happening to this mayor. It's Mayor Eric Adams of New York, who's trying to run for re-election. This guy Adams has a lot of spirit. He tries to mix with a lot of different crowds. He gets around. He goes on trips. Apparently, one of the alleged perks that he got on one of these trips was that his seating was upgraded or something on a flight or on a few flights. But Trump mentions in the article that I was just talking about that he's been upgraded in flights as well, and it's not really a big deal. This doesn't mean it's corruption. it's just fascinating to read all this stuff. It's a wonderful race to be following, and to be following a personality like Eric Adams. There's a picture of Eric Adams there. See, from the New York Times. You see him? There he is. See? Okay. So, at any rate, oops, did I do something wrong? No. Okay. Well, let's keep going. I think we're pretty much finishing up. I think you'll get bored if I go on. I just want to mention, I think, one more article, and it's about, I hate to mention just another corruption article. These people get thrown in jail. This guy just got like 10 years in jail. Here's the headline. Co-founder of Aussie Media gets 10 years in prison. Well, this guy not only pled not guilty, but he was willing and did testify at his trial. And anyway, he still gets slammed for 10 years. I hope he has some good attorneys. His name was Carlos Watson. I'll just read the lead. This article by Danielle Kay, page B4. That's the business section. Very interesting section, by the way, in the New York Times, the business section, which has a lot of interesting articles that are not always strictly business. So the lead says, Carlos Watson, a co-founder of the now defunct digital media company Aussie Media, was sentenced on Monday to almost 10 years in prison for trying to defraud investors and lenders by lying about the company's finances. Well, kind of vague charges. He lied about the company's finances. I guess tried to make a better picture of his, an exaggeration is a lie, and on and on. But this guy, like I said, it says here in another graph, throughout the legal proceedings, Mr. Watson denied the fraud allegations. In court, his lawyers argued that his representations to investors had been based on good faith assessments of Aussie's finances, et cetera, et cetera. So, the cup is half empty, the cup is half full. There's an exaggeration. Is it a lie? Is it really worth 10 years of this man's life? That kind of a sentence to impose on a human being, because he might have made an exaggeration. I don't get it. And he finally says somewhere here that basically this was done for racial reasons, because apparently the gentleman is what we would be considered, quote, black, unquote. And that could very well be, because in this country we have a lot of that kind of weird attitude about people, very freakish concerning their whatever continent of origin or facial features, etc. Some apparently don't make the grade according to, if you don't come from one of those Nordic countries or something like that, you're not considered able to lead a company. If you try and do that, you end up in jail. I think that's basically the drift. So apparently he did mention that in his defense. I can't really quite find it here. Yeah. Well, there you go, Mr. Watson. I do hope you can, yes. Yeah, here it says here, quote, Mr. Watson, at his sentencing hearing on Monday, reiterated his stance that the government selectively prosecuted him because he is a black man. So, more of this stuff with, you got the Mayor Eric Adams, you got this guy Carlos Watson, no surprises here. Okay, I'm going to sign off now because I think you guys have heard enough from a newspaper of 2 days ago. Uh, so I loved chatting, loved going over some of the stuff. It's a little bit long. I hate to make it a half an hour. Uh, my name again is Peter Duveen. This is my channel on YouTube. I think you should be able to find it and view some of my other videos if you have an interest. So let's see if I can put a stop to this video. This is kind of hard for me to do, but let's give it a whirl, okay? Thanks a lot for listening, and hope to see you on again soon. Bye.